The nurse wheeled me into a hospital room that wasn't listed on my chart. What scared me wasn't the mistake, it was how calmly everyone accepted it. I'd been admitted through the emergency department just before midnight. Nothing dramatic. Chest pain that turned out to be stress-related, dehydration, and a borderline heart rhythm they wanted to monitor overnight. The kind of situation hospitals handle every day. I expected to be discharged by morning. The ER was busy but controlled. Phones ringing, curtains sliding, staff moving with the practiced efficiency of people who had done this too. Many times to count. Around 12:40 a.m. A nurse came to my bed with a tablet in her hand. "We're going to transfer you upstairs," she said, already unlocking the gurney brakes. "Telemetry floor." That was quick, I said. She smiled without looking at me. We had an opening. The hallway lights blurred as she pushed me toward the elevators. We passed nurses chatting quietly, a janitor mopping, a doctor scrolling through his phone. No one paid me any special attention, which made it feel normal. The elevator ride was silent. When the doors opened, I expected the usual bustle of a hospital floor nurse's station, call lights chiming, footsteps instead. The hallway was quiet, not abandoned, just subdued. The walls were the same pale blue as the rest of the hospital, but the lighting was softer, warmer. The floor tiles were older, scuffed in places where beds had been rolled back and forth for years. "This way," the nurse said, turning left as we moved down the hall. I noticed something odd. There were no room numbers on the doors, just small white placards with barcodes. I pointed weakly. "Which room am I in?" She glanced at her tablet. Just a moment. She slowed, frowned slightly, then nodded to herself. "Room's been reassigned," she said. "You're here." She stopped at a door near the end of the hallway and pushed it open. The room looked fine. Single bed, heart monitor, for stand, window with blinds half drawn, a chair in the corner, clean, maintained, in use, but there was no number on the doorframe. I noticed that immediately. Hospitals label everything, as she adjusted my bed and plugged in the monitor. I asked, "What room number is this?" She paused, just for a fraction of a second, then smiled again. "It'll update," she said. "The system's slow at night." She handed me the call button and stepped toward the door. "If you need anything, press this." The door closed softly behind her. I pressed the call button almost immediately, not because I needed anything, just to test it. Nothing happened. No light, no sound. I waited, pressed it again. Still nothing. A few minutes later, another nurse walked past my door. I could hear her shoes on the tile. "Nurse." I called. She stopped, stood in the doorway. "Didn't come in." "Yes?" she asked. "My call button doesn't seem to be working." She glanced at the wall, then at me, then back at the hallway behind her. "I'll note it," she said. She didn't step closer. "Can you tell me what room this is?" I asked. Her expression tightened. Not fear, caution. "You're assigned," she said carefully. "That's what matters." She walked away. I lay there, listening. No beeping monitors from other rooms. No voices, no carts rolling past, just the soft hum of the lights and the steady beep of my heart monitor. Reached for my chart on the bed tray. My name, my date of birth, my diagnosis, room. The field was blank at 1:17 a.m. I heard a gurney roll past my door, then stop. I heard a quiet exchange, muffled voices. Temporary placement, someone said. After midnight, another replied. Don't update the map. The gurney moved on. I tried to tell myself. I was overthinking. Hospitals are complex systems. Mistakes happen. Temporary. Rooms exist. But as I stared at the blank space where a room number should have been, a thought settled in my chest. Heavy and cold. If this room didn't exist on my chart, then where, exactly, had they put me? Asterisk, I didn't sleep. Not because I was in pain, because the room never felt unattended. Around 2 a.m., the hallway lights dimmed further. Not off, just lowered, like the hospital was trying not to draw attention to itself. My heart monitor continued its steady rhythm. The only proof I still existed. At 2:14 a.m., a nurse appeared at the doorway. Different from the first two. Older, calm, efficient. She didn't step inside. Didn't cross the threshold. How are you feeling? She asked. Fine, I said. But I still don't know what room this is. She nodded, as if I'd asked something reasonable. This is a temporary assignment, she said. You'll be moved when a proper room opens. Why can't anyone come in? I asked. She looked down the hallway, lowered her voice. We're not supposed to, she said. Not after dark. Why? She hesitated, then said, because patients in temporary rooms tend to get confused. She adjusted my foretubing from the doorway, stretching just far enough not to enter. Try to rest, she added. At 3 a.m., the monitor at the foot of my bed flickered. Just once, the screen refreshed. For a moment, my name disappeared. Then it came back. Room field, still blank. At 3:26 a.m., I heard voices again, closer this time, outside my door. Still here? Someone whispered. Yes, another replied. But he's stable. Then don't move him yet. The voices faded. I finally slept sometime after that. Light sleep, uncomfortable. DREAMLESS. Woke to sunlight. The room looked exactly the same, but something had shifted. Hallway was louder now. Carts rolling, monitors chiming. Morning. Voices, normal hospital sounds. A nurse entered my room, walked all the way in, smiled brightly. Good morning, she said. How are you feeling? I blinked at her. You can come in now. She looked confused. Of course. I glanced at the doorframe. There was a number there, now 4B-17. That wasn't there last night, I said. She chuckled politely. Sometimes patients don't notice things when they're tired. She checked my vitals, adjusted my chart, then frowned slightly at her tablet. She said. What? I asked. It's strange, she said. Your transfer notes show you were here overnight, but there's no record of when you arrived. My chest tightened. And there's no discharge time, she continued. It just says, she stopped herself. Says what? She smiled again. Too quickly. Nothing important. Later that morning, a doctor came in, reviewed my results, declared me stable, cleared me for discharge. By noon, I was walking toward the exit with paperwork in hand. I passed the elevators, paused, looked up. The floor directory listed. Telemetry for B&O mention of temporary rooms. No footnotes, no exceptions. As I reached the lobby, I noticed a man sitting in a wheelchair near the information. Desk.hospital bracelet still on. Gown wrinkled. Eyes unfocused. Have you been discharged? I asked him gently. He shook his head. I'm waiting for my room, he said. Which one? He hesitated, then whispered. The one they don't write down. A nurse approached quickly, placed a hand on the back of his chair. Sir, let's get you settled, she said. She wheeled him toward the elevators, pressed a button I couldn't see. That night, at home, I checked my online patient portal. Everything looked normal. Diagnosis, treatment, discharge, except for one line buried deep in the visit. Summary: temporary placement, room number, no TIMESTAMP. No. Explanation: I understand now. Hospitals don't just treat patients, they manage flow, they prevent bottlenecks, they solve problems quietly. And sometimes, when there are too many patients and not enough rooms, they don't turn people away. They put them somewhere that doesn't exist till morning. The call button stopped working at exactly midnight. Not gradually, not inconsistently. Exactly, I noticed, because I was awake when it happened. Hospitals make sleep difficult, even on good nights. And this wasn't a good night. The room was too cold, the 4-line pulled when I shifted, and the monitor beside my bed beeped softly every few minutes for reasons no one ever explained. At 11:59 p.m., I pressed the call button to ask for a blanket. The light turned on, somewhere down the hall. A chime sounded. Normal. At 12:01 a.m., I pressed it again. Nothing, no light, no sound. I pressed harder, held it down. Still, nothing. I checked the cord, thinking it had come loose. It hadn't. Everything was connected. The button simply didn't respond. I waited. Hospitals are slow at night. I knew that, but 10 minutes passed. Then 20. At 12:27 a.m., I heard footsteps outside my room. I raised my voice. Excuse me. The footsteps stopped. Someone stood outside my door. I could see their shadow through the frosted glass panel. Yes. A voice said, female.com, neutral. My call button isn't working, I said. I pressed it earlier. There was a pause, not confusion, calculation. You're in room 3C09, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, I replied. I think so. Another pause then. I'll note it. She didn't come in, didn't open the door. The footsteps moved on. I lay back, uneasy, but still rational. Old wiring, night shift, staffing. Nothing to panic over. I tried to sleep. Sometime later, maybe an hour, maybe 2, I woke to the sound of coughing. Not from my room, from down the hall. Then another sound, a bed. Rolling. Stopping. Doors opening. Quiet conversation. Then silence. I checked the time. 2:03. M. My monitor beeped again. This time, the screen flickered. Just briefly, I thought. I saw my name disappear. Then it came back. I pressed the call button again. Still nothing. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and stood. The floor was colder than I expected. The hallway lights were dimmer now, like they'd been lowered deliberately. I opened my door. The hallway was empty. No nurses, station, no carts, no staff, just a long corridor stretching farther than it should have. I walked slowly, footfall rattling softly beside me. At the end of the hall, I saw a nurse sitting at a desk, head down, typing. Double quotes. Excuse me, I said. She looked up. What do you need? She asked. My call button isn't working, I repeated. and I haven't been checked on in a while. She glanced at her screen. Scrolled. Frowned slightly. You're not scheduled for rounds until morning, she said. My monitor's been acting strange. I added. She nodded. That can happen. Shouldn't someone? She raised a hand gently, not rude, final. After midnight, she said. We only respond to critical alerts. What counts as critical? I asked. She hesitated, then said, if it flags, we'll come. I looked back down the hallway toward my room. It felt farther away now. What about patients who need help? I asked. She met my eyes. Her expression softened, just slightly. Most of them don't, she said. Not after midnight. I returned to my room, closed the door, sat on the bed, listening. The hallway stayed quiet, too quiet at 3:11 a.m. I heard a call, light chime, not from my room, from somewhere else on the floor. It rang once, then stopped. No footsteps followed. At 3:28 a.m., I heard coughing again, closer, more strained than nothing. I pressed my call button one more time, out of habit, out of hope, still dead. And that's when I realized the most unsettling part. The button wasn't broken. It had been intentionally disabled, and whatever happened to patients after midnight, it clearly wasn't considered urgent. Asterisk after that night. I stopped pressing the call button, not because it started working, because I understood it wouldn't. At 3:47 a.m., the coughing returned, closer now, wet, uncontrolled. It echoed through the hallway, bouncing off the walls until it felt like it was coming from everywhere at once. I sat upright, heart racing. I waited for alarms, for footsteps, for someone to respond. Nothing happened. At 4:12 a.m., the coughing stopped, abruptly, no gradual easing, no final gasp, just silence. 5 minutes later, a nurse walked past my door, unhurried, carrying a clipboard. I opened my door. Someone was coughing, I said. It sounded bad. She stopped, didn't look surprised, didn't look concerned. Room number? She asked. I don't know, I said. Down the hall, left side. She nodded slowly. I'll check the log, she said. She turned and walked away. I never saw her go down the hall. At 5:30 a.m., the lights brightened, morning mode. The floor came back to life. Carts, rolling, voices beeping monitors. A nurse entered my room with a bright smile. Good morning. How was your night? I stared at her. Someone needed help, I said. Hours ago. Her smile didn't fade. That happens, she said. Night shifts can be quiet. No, I said. They weren't quiet. She checked my vitals, adjusted my avoided my eyes. Later that morning, during rounds, I asked the doctor, is there a patient missing from this floor? I asked, someone who was coughing all night. He scrolled through his tablet, paused. Scrolled again. No, he said. All patients accounted for. What about overnight? I pressed. He looked up, just long enough to say, nothing critical was reported. I was discharged that afternoon, routine, efficient, polite, before I left. I walked down the hallway, past the room where the coughing had come from. The door was open, the bed was stripped, fresh. Sheets, no equipment, no sign anyone had been there. A cleaning staff member wiped the bedside table. I asked her quietly, did someone stay here last night? She didn't answer, just kept wiping. At home. Curiosity gnawed at me. I logged into my patient portal, clicked through the visit, summary.vitals.medications.notes. Then I found it, buried deep in the overnight documentation. Night status: stable, no intervention, RQ or REDITH. There was a list beneath it: room numbers, patient IDs, times. 1. Entry caught my eye, las 12:58. Monitor silent. Auto, RSOLV. No patient name. No follow-up. I called the hospital the next day, asked to speak with someone about overnight care. They transferred me 3 times, then disconnected the call. Weeks later, I ran into a nurse from that floor at a grocery store. I recognized her immediately. She recognized me too. I heard someone die, I said quietly. That night, she closed her eyes, just for a moment. After midnight, she said, the system switches modes. What mode? I asked. She swallowed. Containment. She explained it slowly. Care doesn't stop. It changes after midnight. Staff respond only to alarms, flagged as recoverable. Patients who deteriorate without triggering the right alert are documented, then quietly removed. They're not declared dead on the floor, she said. They're transferred. Where? I asked. She shook her head. I don't know, she said. We just stopped seeing them. That night, I dreamed of call buttons lighting up. One by one, then going dark. I woke up sweating, checked my phone. It was 12:03 a.m., and for the first time since leaving the hospital, I realized something. No one checks on patients after midnight, because by then, the hospital has already decided who is worth saving. I noticed the hallway because it didn't make sense. Hospitals are designed to be logical. Even when they're confusing, there's still a system underneath, color-coded signs, arrows on the floor, maps posted at every elevator bank. This hallway wasn't on any of them. I'd been admitted for observation after a minor surgery complication. Nothing serious, they said. Just a night or 2 to be safe. My room was on the 5th floor, surgical recovery. I'd walked that floor twice already, once with a nurse, once on my own, and I was confident I knew the layout. So when I went looking for the restroom at 1:30 a.m. and found a corridor I'd never seen before, it stopped me cold. The hallway branched off near the end of the ward, past a linen cart that hadn't been moved in hours. No sign, no label, just an open passage. The lighting was dimmer inside, warmer somehow, like older bulbs were being used. The floor tiles were the same pattern as the rest of the hospital, but more worn, scuffed in long, repeated paths. Beds had been rolled through here. Often I hesitated, then stepped inside. The corridor stretched, farther than it should have, too far for the building's footprint. Doors lined both sides, each with a small window and a curtain drawn. Halfway across the glass, every door was closed. I heard a monitor beep. Then another, soft, distant. This wasn't an abandoned space, it was active. I backed out of the hallway and returned to my room, unsettled. The next morning, I asked my nurse about it. There's a hallway past the linen cart, I said casually. Is that another ward? She froze, not dramatically, just long enough to notice. Which linen cart? She asked. The one near the end of the hall, I said. By the fire door. She smiled tightly. Oh, that area's closed, she said. Probably looked longer than it was. But I heard monitors, I replied. Her smile didn't change. Sounds carry at night. Later that day, I checked the floor map near the elevators. Every wing was listed, every ward labeled. There was no branching corridor. That evening, around 11:45 p.m., I heard a gurney roll past my room, slow, careful. It stopped near the end of the hall. I heard voices, low, professional. "Transfer approved," someone said. "No room listed," another replied. "Use the old wing." My stomach tightened. At 12:10 a.m., I heard footsteps again. This time, they were pushing something heavier, metal rattling, wheels catching slightly on tile seams. I got out of bed and opened my door just a crack. Down the hall, two nurses were wheeling a patient on a gurney. The patient's eyes were open, wide, confused. They turned down the corridor past the linen cart into the hallway that didn't exist. I watched until they disappeared, then the lights in that hallway dimmed further. The next morning, I asked a different nurse. "You transferred someone last night," I said. "Where did you take them?" She looked at my chart, then back at me. "No transfers on this floor overnight," she said. But I saw she shook her head gently. "Patients get confused at night," she said. "It's very common." That afternoon, I was cleared to walk the floor again. I waited until no one was watching. Then I walked to the end of the hall, past the linen cart. The corridor was still there, but now a temporary wall blocked it. Plain drywall, no signage, no warning. As I turned to leave, I noticed something small near the base of the wall. A paper sign taped crookedly, easy to miss. "Temporary wing, do not update MAPs." My heart pounded. That night, lying in bed, I heard monitors beeping again. Closer now, as if the wall wasn't there at all, and I realized something terrifying. The hospital hadn't removed the wing it had. Removed it from memory, after they put up the wall. The hospital acted like the hallway had never existed. Staff walked past it without slowing. Cleaning crews mopped right up to the drywall and turned away. New signs appeared, redirecting foot traffic in subtle ways. No one acknowledged the change, which made it worse. The monitors kept beeping. Not loudly, not urgently, just steady, rhythmic reminders that people were still there, behind the wall. I stopped asking questions, not because I wasn't curious, because every answer felt rehearsed. On my third night, I woke to a familiar sound, wheels, slow, controlled. A gurney. I checked the clock, 12:06. M. The door to my room opened quietly. Two nurses stood outside, both wearing neutral expressions, both holding tablets. "We're transferring you," one of them said. "For what?" I asked, heart pounding. "Observation," she replied. "Temporary placement." "I'm already being observed," I said. She nodded. "Yes." They didn't wait for my consent, didn't ask questions. They simply unlocked the bed and began rolling me into the hallway. As we passed the nurses' station, I noticed something unsettling. The board listing. Patient names had changed. Mine wasn't there. We stopped at the temporary wall. One nurse tapped her badge against a small panel I hadn't noticed. Before, a seam appeared. The drywall slid open silently. Beyond it was the hallway, longer than before. Brighter, occupied, beds lined both sides now. Curtains drawn, monitors humming, patients lying still, eyes open. "We don't update the maps," the nurse said calmly, as if explaining a minor inconvenience. It causes panic. Why is this place hidden? I asked. She adjusted her grip on the bed rail. Because it isn't permanent, she said. But everyone here looks stable, she finished. Stable enough not to require intervention. They wheeled me into an empty bay. No room number, no chart holder, just a bed and a monitor. As they plugged me in, I noticed something else. The monitor didn't display my name, just a code, temp, rec-17. How long will I be here? I asked. The nurse paused, then said, till the system resolves. They left. The curtains stayed open. Listened, patients whispering. Machines humming, staff passing without stopping. A man in the bed across from me spoke quietly. They told me this wing was temporary, he said. I've been here 3 days. Why don't they move us back? I asked. He smiled sadly. Because once you're here, you are no longer counted upstairs. Hours passed, then more. At 6 a.m. the lights brightened. Staff moved faster. Purposefully, a doctor stopped at my bed, reviewed the monitor, nodded, double quotes, good news, he said. You're being transferred. Relief flooded me. Back to my room. He hesitated. Discharge, he said. But I haven't. Your chart shows overnight observation completed, he interrupted. Everything resolved. By noon, I was walking out of the hospital, paperwork in hand, clearance given, no questions asked, at home. I logged in to my patient portal. Everything looked normal, except for one thing. There was no record of my third night, no wing, no transfer, no temp-rec-17. Later that week, I returned to the hospital for a follow-up. I walked the 5th floor. Again, the linen cart was gone. The wall was permanent. Now, painted, blended, no sound came from behind it. No monitors, no voices. A nurse passed by. I asked quietly, what happened to the temporary wing? She didn't stop walking, didn't turn around. There was never a wing, she said, and I understood then. Hospitals don't erase mistakes. They reassign them. They don't close. Wings, they absorb patients. And when capacity becomes a problem, they simply expand into places no one is allowed to remember. The nurse stopped at my doorway and told me she wasn't allowed to come in after dark. She didn't whisper it. She didn't sound afraid. She said it the way someone explains a policy. They've repeated too many times. I'd been moved again just before shift change. Another temporary placement, they said. Another room near the end of the corridor, far from the nurse's station, where the lights were always slightly dimmer. It was 9:42 p.m. when they wheeled me in. The sun had already gone down. The hallway lights clicked softly as they passed beneath them. This is your room, the nurse said, stopping the bed just inside the doorway. She unplugged my 4-pole from the gurney and connected it to the wall. She handed me the call button. Then she took one step back, out of the room. Wait, I said. Aren't you going to finish checking the monitor? She glanced at the clock mounted above the doorframe. 9:58 p.m. Can do that from here, she said. She reached just far enough inside to adjust the screen without crossing the threshold. Her feet stayed planted in the hallway. Is there something wrong with the room? I asked. She hesitated, then gave a small, professional smile. Nothing you need to worry about, she said. We just don't enter certain rooms after dark. Why not? Her eyes flicked briefly toward the ceiling, toward the corner, where the camera sat. "It's for our safety," she said. She stepped back fully now. The hallway lights reflected off the polished floor between us, creating a clean, invisible line she wouldn't cross. "If you need anything," she added, "press the call button." "You won't come in," I said. She nodded once. At 10 p.m. The hallway lights dimmed, not off, just lower, like the hospital had entered a different mode. I pressed the call button. The light came on, somewhere down the hall. I heard a chime. A minute passed. Then 5. A voice crackled through the speaker above my bed. "Yes?" The nurse asked. "I'm feeling dizzy," I said. "Can someone check my vitals?" There was a pause. Not hesitation, consultation. Double quotes. "We can monitor you remotely," she replied. "If anything changes, we'll know." "I'd feel better if someone came in," I said. Another pause, then, "I'm sorry. We're not permitted to enter room C14 after night shift begins." "Room C14. I repeated. She didn't respond. I looked around. The room was clean, maintained, occupied. Before me, but there was something missing. No chart holder. On the wall, no whiteboard with nurse names. No emergency. Instructions posted near the bed. I checked my chart. Diagnosis. Medications. Vitals. Room. Blank. At 11:13 p.m. I heard a sound from the room next to mine. A low thud, then another. I called out, "Hello." No response. I pressed the call button again. "There's a noise next door," I said. "Is someone okay?" The nurse's voice came back softer this time. "That room is also restricted," she said. "Please stay in your bed." "What does restricted mean?" I asked. Another pause. "Longer, it means," she said carefully. "We don't escalate situations that are already being handled." I lay back, heart racing. The monitor beeped steadily, too steadily. At 12:02 a.m. The lights in my room flickered. Just once, I noticed something new then. The door frame scratched lightly into the paint. Just above eye level, a small marking, almost invisible unless you were looking for it. Night dash on L. Why I realized then that this room wasn't closed to staff because it was dangerous. It was closed because it had already been classified, and whatever happened in here after dark wasn't meant to be interrupted. Asterisk after midnight. The hospital changed its posture. Not visibly, not loudly, but everything felt more deliberate. The monitors continued to beep, the lights stayed dim, and no one crossed my doorway at 12:18 a.m. The noise next door returned. This time, it wasn't a thud. It was a voice, low, strained, double quotes, "Hello." Someone whispered. It took me a second to realize they were calling from the adjacent room, not the hallway, not the nurse's station, inside a restricted room. Just like mine. I pressed my call button. "They're calling for help," I said. "The patient next door." The response came quickly. "Too quickly, we're aware," the nurse said. "Then why aren't you helping them?" I asked. There was a pause. Then, "We're monitoring the situation." The voice next door grew louder, panic slipping through the restraint. "I can't breathe," the patient said. "Please." I swung my legs off the bed. "I'm going to check on them," I said. "No," the nurse replied sharply. "Please remain in your bed." "Why won't anyone go in there?" I demanded. The intercom crackled. A different voice came through this time, lower, older, double quotes. Because if we enter, the voice said calmly, we become responsible. The words settled like lead. At night, the voice continued, certain rooms are classified as observation only. What does that mean? I asked. It means care is documented, the voice replied. Not administered. The voice next door began coughing. Violently, wet, uncontrolled, i.e., stood up, pulled the foreline from the pole, started toward the door. The hallway lights brightened instantly, not fully, just enough to remind me I was being watched. Please, the voice said. You don't understand the consequences. I understand someone's dying, I said. Another pause. Then, that determination hasn't been made yet. At 12:41 a.m., the coughing stopped. Abruptly, no final sound, no gradual silence, just absence. The monitors in my room flickered. For a brief moment, the display changed. Instead of my vitals, I saw a list. Room codes. STATUSES, Semenos 14, Menos ese table, Semenos 15, Menos O2, Resolveth. Screen refreshed. My vitals returned. At 1:10 a.m. A nurse appeared at my doorway. She stood there, hands folded, eyes tired. I'm sorry you had to hear that, she said. Are they dead? I asked. She shook her head slightly. She said, resolved how? She didn't answer. She reached in just barely and adjusted my IV. Her foot never crossed the threshold. Morning came like nothing had happened. Sunlight. Through the blinds, normal voices, busy hallways. Different nurse entered my room, stepped fully inside, smiled brightly. Good morning. How was your night? I stared at her. The patient next door, I said. What happened to them? She checked her tablet. SCROLLED. Frowned. Double quotes there. Was no patient assigned to the adjacent room. Overnight, she said. I pointed toward the wall. I heard them. She smiled gently. Patients can experience auditory confusion at night. Later that day, as I was being discharged, I passed the restricted rooms again. The doors were open now. Empty beds stripped. Equipment gone. On the doorframe of the room next to mine, the same marking had been scratched into the paint. Night dash on LYI stopped at the nurse's station. Why do those rooms exist? I asked quietly. A nurse looked up at me. Her voice was barely audible. Because hospitals don't fail, she said. They adapt by letting people die. I asked. She shook her head. By deciding when not to intervene. That night, at home, I searched hospital policy manuals online. Deep, buried, obscure.ie. Found a phrase repeated in several documents. Nocturnal liability reduction. PROTOC explained everything at night. Certain rooms are designated as non-intervention zones. Patients are monitored, not treated. Outcomes are recorded, not altered. It wasn't negligence. It was policy. I understand now why nurses won't enter those rooms after dark. It's not because they're afraid of what might happen inside. It's because once they step in, the hospital has to admit that someone needed help, and some truths are more dangerous than letting a room stay quiet. The first patient disappeared on my second night. Not dramatically. No alarms. No rush of staff. One moment the bed across from mine was occupied. The next morning, it wasn't. I was in a semi-private room on the internal medicine floor. Nothing critical. An infection that wasn't responding the way they wanted. They told me I'd be there a few days, maybe longer. The man across from me had been there longer. Late 50s, quiet, polite. We spoke only a few times, mostly out of boredom. They keep telling me I'm almost discharged, he said one night, staring at the ceiling. They've been saying that for 3 days. What are you in for? I asked. He hesitated. They won't tell me anymore, he said. Just that I'm stable. That word again, the night he disappeared. I woke around 3:20 a.m. to the sound of movement, sheets, rustling, the bed rolling, low, voices. I opened my eyes just enough to see silhouettes at the foot of his bed. 2 nurses, 1 orderly. No urgency, no tension. They didn't turn on the overhead lights. They unplugged his monitor, rolled the bed toward the door. He didn't speak, didn't resist. Just stared at the ceiling as they moved him out. By morning, his side of the room looked untouched. Fresh sheets, no equipment, no name on the whiteboard. When breakfast arrived, I asked the nurse, what happened to the man who was here last night? She glanced at the empty bed, checked her tablet. He was discharged, she said, at 3 in the morning. I asked. She smiled politely. Discharges can happen at any time. I didn't argue. Hospitals do strange things, but over the next few days, it kept happening. A woman 2 rooms down, a teenager who'd been crying all night, an older man who always asked for ice, chips. They vanished. Always overnight, always quietly. Their beds were reset before morning, their names erased. One afternoon, I overheard a conversation near the nurse's station. Room cleared. Yes, chart closed, marked discharged. But I never saw anyone leave. I said to my nurse later. She didn't look up. Patients don't always remember transitions, she replied. That night, I couldn't sleep. I watched the hallway through the crack in my door. At 12:47 a.m., a gurney rolled past, then another. They stopped outside room 512. A woman inside began to cry. Softly. I thought I was going home, she said. You are, a nurse replied. Calmly. The gurney rolled away. The next morning, room 512 was empty. I asked the nurse again, where did she go? She looked at me carefully. Why are you asking so many questions? Because no one leaves, I said. They just disappear. She lowered her voice. Once a patient is discharged on paper, she said, they're no longer our responsibility. But they're still here, I whispered. She shook her head. Not officially. That night, I checked my chart. Everything looked normal. Diagnosis, treatment. Then I saw something new. Discharge, status, PINDION, date, no time, just pending. I lay back, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet, and for the first time since being admitted, I understood the real fear. It wasn't dying in the hospital, it was being discharged without ever leaving. After I saw discharge status, pending on my chart, the floor felt different, not emptier, more organized. Staff moved faster now. Less small talk, more tablets, more quiet confirmations. I noticed. They stopped using patient names after midnight. Just room numbers, codes, .status. At 1:12 a.m., I heard my neighbor speaking softly through the wall. I'm still here, he said. I don't feel ready, a nurse answered. Calmly, you've already been cleared. But I didn't sign anything. You don't need to, she replied. The hallway lights dimmed. The monitors hummed steadily. I opened my door, just enough to watch. 2 orderlies stood outside my neighbor's room. One held a clipboard. The other held a wristband scanner. They didn't bring a wheelchair, they brought a gurney. My neighbor's door opened. Couldn't see his face, but I heard his voice. Where are you taking me? He asked. To processing, someone said. The gurney rolled away by morning. His room was empty, the whiteboard wiped clean. I asked the day nurse how many discharges happened overnight. She frowned at her screen. Several, she said. Busy night. Did anyone leave the building? I asked. She looked up. Her eyes flicked briefly toward the elevators. Leaving isn't part of the discharge process, she said. That afternoon, I was called for imaging. As they wheeled me down the hallway, I noticed something new. A door near the end of the corridor, unmarked, locked above it. In small lettering, POST discharge. Holdingy tried to ask about it. The orderly pushed faster. Is that where people go after they're discharged? I asked. He didn't answer. Didn't look back that night. I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling until the lights dimmed again. At 12:01 a.m., my monitor flickered. The display refreshed. Discharge status. Completed sat up. My heart racing. The door opened quietly. 2 nurses stood there, smiling. Double quote, good news. One said, You're all set. All set for what? I asked. Transition. She replied. They didn't unplug my monitor. They didn't remove my IV. They just unlocked the bed and began rolling me toward the door. I haven't signed anything, I said. You were cleared earlier, she replied gently. The system updated. We passed empty rooms, fresh beds, no patients. The elevator doors opened without a button being pressed inside. Other gurneys waited patients, lying quietly, awake, silent. The doors closed. The elevator moved downward when it opened. I expected the lobby. Instead, I saw a hallway. Low ceiling, no windows, bright lights. A sign on the wall read, Discharged patients, temporary PLACI, MNT, wheeled me into a large room. Rows of beds, curtains half-drawn, monitors humming, patients staring upward. Where are we? I asked. A nurse adjusted my chart. Not here, she said. She clipped something to my wrist. A new band, no name, just a barcode. How long will I be here? I asked. She paused, then smiled. Until your record finalizes. They left. The lights stayed bright. I lay there listening to the monitors, the quiet breathing, the stillness. I understood now. Discharge doesn't mean release, it means removal. Hospitals don't lose patients, they archive them, and once you're discharged, you stop existing in the place that people are allowed to check. The hospital told me my transfer was temporary. They didn't tell me the room was permanent. By the time they moved me, I already knew what that meant. I'd been admitted for 6 days. Longer than expected, longer than they were comfortable with. My condition wasn't getting worse, but it wasn't improving either, which, in this hospital, seemed to be the real problem. The transfer happened at 1:08 a.m. No warning, no explanation, just 2 nurses arriving with a gurney and a tablet already filled out. We're relocating you. One of them said, just overnight. Why? I asked. She smiled the way staff do when the decision has already been. Approved. Capacity, she said. They wheeled me through corridors I'd never seen before, past locked doors, past stairwells, marked staff. Only the lighting changed as we went. Deeper, softer, warmer, almost comforting. This doesn't look like a patient wing, I said. It's not on the public maps. The nurse replied calmly. We stopped at a door, near the end of a long hallway, plain, unmarked no. Room number, this is you, she said. The room was larger than the others, too large, a single bed in the center, chairs arranged neatly along the wall, a heart monitor mounted higher than usual. No call button, I noticed that. Immediately. Where's the call button? I asked. You won't need it, she replied. They connected my monitor, adjusted my four. Neither nurse crossed fully into the room at the same time. One always stayed near the door. Can you tell me what room this is? I asked. The nurse checked her tablet, then hesitated. This room doesn't have a number, she said. It's a designation. For what? I asked. She didn't answer. Before leaving, she taped a form to the wall near the bed. Not a chart, a checklist. Final review in progress. The door closed softly behind them. I sat there, listening. The room was quiet, but not empty. I heard movement through the walls. Low voices, footsteps, beds being rolled at 2:17 a.m. The monitor flickered. The screen changed. Instead of my name, a status appeared. Process, activate. Pressed the bed rails. Heart pounding. I tried to stand. The four tugged painfully. The door opened again. A man entered, not a nurse, not a doctor, no badge, no uniform, just a clipboard and a neutral expression. Good evening, he said. I'm here to make sure everything is complete. Complete what? I asked. He glanced around the room, satisfied. Your stay, he said. I'm not discharged. I said quickly. He nodded. Double quotes, not yet. He checked boxes on the clipboard, paused at one. Have you been moved before? He asked. Yes, I said. Several times. He nodded again. That makes this easier for who? I asked. He looked up, met my eyes. For the hospital, he said. At 3 a.m. The hallway outside grew quieter. Dot lights dimmed further. The man returned. He stood just inside the doorway. Didn't come closer. This room exists, he said calmly, for patients who don't resolve on schedule. What happens here? I asked. He hesitated. Just long enough. This is where the process finishes, he said. The monitor beeped softly, steadily, and I realized something that made my chest tighten. Every patient I'd seen disappear, every unlisted room, every erased wing, all of it led here. This wasn't a mistake. It was the final step. The man with the clipboard didn't return for a while. Time in that room behaved differently. There was no clock on the wall. My phone had no signal. The lights never fully dimmed, never fully brightened, just a constant, neutral glow. I watched the monitor instead. The word process remained. Steady, no numbers, no VITAL, just status. At some point, I heard movement in the hallway, not hurried, not quiet, organized. The door opened again. This time, 2 people entered. One nurse, one administrator, both calm, both carrying tablets. We're going to complete your review, the administrator said. I want to speak to a doctor. I replied. She nodded politely. You already have. The nurse stood near the wall, arms folded. She didn't touch anything, didn't look at me. What does this room do? I asked. The administrator scrolled on her tablet. This room exists, she said, to resolve cases that exceed expected duration. I'm not dying, I said. That's correct, she replied. You're also not improving. The nurse glanced at the monitor. The word active changed. Assessment complete. What happens next? I asked. The administrator didn't answer immediately. She checked a box, another double quotes. Next, she said, your care becomes administrative. They wheeled in a cart, not medical. Equipment, files, WRIST, forms, The administrator removed my hospital bracelet, replaced it with another. This one had no name, no BARCODE, just a thin grey band with a single stamped word, resolved. You're being discharged. I asked. The nurse finally spoke. Yes, but I'm still here. I said. That won't be reflected, she replied. They unplugged the monitor. The screen went black, silent. I felt something shift then, not physically. EXISTENTIALLY. The administrator stepped back. Once the system no longer tracks you as a patient, she said, the hospital no longer bears responsibility for outcomes. What outcomes? I asked. She smiled faintly. Any. They left. The door locked. Hours passed, or minutes. I don't know. Eventually, I heard beds being rolled, doors opening, voices murmuring. The door to my room opened again. Not the same people, orderlies. This time they didn't speak, didn't meet my eyes. They transferred me to a gurney and wheeled me out. The hallway beyond was unlike any I'd seen before. Long, wide, filled with beds. Patients lay quietly in them, awake, silent. No monitors, no IVs, no charts. A sign hung above the entrance. Clean. Official. Final placement. Non-clinical. Own man turned his head slightly as I passed. His eyes were clear, aware. They're done with us, he said softly. Done how? I whispered. He looked forward. Again, on paper, he replied. They placed me in an empty bed, no curtain, no divider. Just space. Lights stayed on. Always. I don't know how long I've been here. There's no way to measure it. No one checks. VITALS. No one asks questions. Sometimes staff pass through, not medical. Administrative. They walk the rows, checking wristbands, confirming statuses. Everyone here wears the same band. Resolvedi. Understand the system now. Hospitals don't exist to heal everyone. They exist to maintain throughput, to prevent stagnation, to keep beds moving. Most patients leave. Some die. And some are finished. Finished doesn't mean cured. It doesn't mean dead. It means complete. If anyone ever tells you a hospital room doesn't exist on any map, if staff won't enter after dark, if patients disappear without discharge, understand this. You haven't found a mistake. You've reached the end of the process. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Terramouth.